This is the field report for this Friday, April 25th, 2013. I want to thank those who sent me some feeds and links. And other than splitting hairs on a variety of topics, try to get the best information out there that I'm aware of or understand. Gradually, I've come to this conclusion, and only because I want to believe that other people's points of view are valid and not influenced by anything that's extreme. And what I mean by extreme, not in the same context that maybe some may perceive what extreme is, because I guess today there are different definitions or different meanings behind the same word, extreme. And what I mean by extreme is that some things are just not part of our normal understanding or thinking or in the parameters of what I understand. Sometimes we have to step out of that box that we maybe understand in the constructs of what extreme might mean. But why I decided to elaborate a little bit more is that apparently what one person means by extreme could be a different explanation. And let's just keep it in simple terms. I had to deconstruct some conversations and go back a little and maybe reassess some of the things I know to be true. And this goes along with a lot of the politics today. And it's like trying to unravel this. It's like trying to unravel a bunch of cell phone cords that are caught together. It's very frustrating and annoying and time consuming. So I try not to elaborate too much, and I don't want to bring in my own philosophies into it. So I'm just going to kind of dissect some of this information that I've been listening and researching over, and I'm going to do some more research time in the next week or so. All right, let's elaborate on some of the conversations around the Boston bombing, also the explosion in Texas followed 2 days later after the Boston bombing. And the reason I didn't want to elaborate too much in the earlier post is because I think it deserves its own real, I guess I would say, like a little bit more explaining and real investigative understanding from that report. What I meant by that is just investigate more into it before I just elaborate on a whole lot of hyperbole. And it's kind of disenfranchising to those who really do know a lot more about these topics than I do and can elaborate more. And I think that's kind of why people do back off on these topics. And I think that it is important that most of us just not delve so much into an issue, but just see it for what it is. The day of the Boston bombing. Now, most of us were caught off guard, of course. If you turned on the TV, we really didn't know how to unravel that either right away. But earlier into the evening following the Boston bombing, there was a lot of questionable things going on. No one really could pinpoint what really happened. All we could get is what we were listening to on TV, and it was starting to really quickly unravel because when the media tries to make a case, I have to say, and I think this is what most people have to say, they want to investigate beyond what they know and what they hear from the media. And that's only because the media, the investigative reports, have also are influenced by their own reports. And we really want straight reporting. So now it really becomes an issue where we go beyond the media and we do our own homework. We usually do that by using what we see on YouTube and just kind of gathering information as we speak. And that's frustrating for anybody who's tried to, who consumes a lot of news media. They know, and the people out there know, that more information will always be revealed in a short period of time. And that makes it hard to assess exactly how to spin the topics on certain valid topics too. but spin a lot of different scenarios or theories. The whole Sandy Hook topic kind of spun its own web of disinformation. And what I mean by disinformation is there was a lot of information left out of the overall reports that shouldn't have been. And I think that's where it becomes a question of how do you describe what happened in the Boston bombing? We saw what we saw, but then there's a lot of theories that play into what happened in Sandy Hook, play into the next attacks. And what will the next attacks in future be for how the media covers these topics in the case of what happened in the Boston bombing and then following what happened in Texas? How do we approach this news? Because I'm even more skeptical about how it's reported, and because I think we should be very, very careful in those early, I'd say 72 hours where the news reports come from, because it is altering and changing very fast in those first 72 hours. And we all know that. We know that we have to sometimes hang back and wait till we get the best reports, and we can dissect it from there. So this one was a little, the apprehension I sense is that none of us want to be wrong about this stuff, okay? We want to be right, and when we become so adamant and stick to our points, that concerns me, because I want to be able to allow myself room to make, I guess I just want to be able to make the right call before I really put my finger on what I think happens. And I think it's still too early to really pinpoint a lot of things, but I think the general information has been that there has been, a face to these bombings. Okay, so we got that far. And then we see what happens with a mother interviewed on April 24th and how she just went on a kind of an emotional tirade. And then we saw the reaction from the other side of the media, which would be the left-wing mainstream media, so to speak. But, I can see sympathy being important in any case when a child is lost. But they're not the same when you're talking about a bombing suspect who gets killed. And let's just hope the information is all correct, because like I said, no one wants to be wrong on these things. But when you see a grieving mother, initially we all want to have sympathy for any grieving parent, but they're never the same. It would be, it isn't the same, because you got the victim and then you got the grieving family from that end of it, and then you got the perpetrators and the grieving family on the other side. And there's a lot of times families are really forced in the situations that they are, and that no one wants to try to devalue anyone's grief, but they aren't the same when we're talking about victims and perpetrators. In any case, they're not the same. Although grief is the same, it's not the same overall. So where I was going to go with this whole thing is that we'll watch this memorial play itself out in Texas. And earlier that day, I just kind of thumbing through news reports from the last previous couple of days on YouTube. And I thought, well, let me see what the information is out there. And I came across these videos. And to me, when you come across those videos and then you watch a couple more, and they're all saying the same thing, I would like to think that this is how we get our news. That if more than two sources are backing up and it sounds legitimate, I can make an argument with that, and I can describe what I see in that respect, because I do see more than two sources saying the same thing. And then I do want to make sure the credibility is a factor, and integrity and credibility are very key to making an argument or making a point. And what I mean by saying this is that when we are looking at this news and we're trying to, like I said, thumb through it and thoroughly digest some of this, because remember, some of us have consumed a lot of news media, and especially in the last probably 5-10 years, because of the internet. That now, I can honestly tell you, I thought I knew everything, but the more I learned, the more I realized I don't know a whole lot. So I'm just going to tell you from somebody who I feel I have a little sense about myself, that I haven't completely lost myself in the consumption of news media, whether it be through the social media or news, that it makes me want to back off a little bit more. I mean, I'm concerned, and I think that this is probably not unfamiliar to a lot of people out there, that we should be concerned about where we get our sources, where we get our information, and we want to be right. So I'm generally careful about how I judge these things, because I think we should be very, very careful how we judge all situations. I don't want to be quick to judge at all. And that's probably why I backed off a little. But like I said, I've seen some videos, and I'm more convinced that there's more that needs to be told about what we've already understand to be true. And what I want to elaborate more about is about this attack that happened in Boston, and then what happened following 2 days later in the explosion in Texas. And from what I was seeing, I mean, I saw it with my own eyes. I mean, my eyes aren't lying. And I think I like to think that the scales have been taken off my eyes. But you got to see it for what it is. And you see an explosion, and you see this fire burning. And by all explanations and experts who deal with fires, there was a screeching sound that came from the video. I'm referring to the Texas explosion. That is by far worth investigating more into, because although authorities, investigators don't know what happened, by looking at the video, it's not hard to decide what happened. There was a fire to start. How that started, that could be explained, but then something came on from the left side of the video, and it had a screeching sound. Now, from the videos I was watching, and I watched more than one video, and I just did a random YouTube search, something everybody can do. You don't have to have 4 years of college in journalism to know how to do this. Okay, although a lot of people like to use big words in journalism, and you have to have 4 years in college, I think you can assess for yourself. The truth is, anybody can go on YouTube, and anybody can describe the same thing I saw. But something ain't right about what you've seen in the amateur video. And I guess I have to say, it's not hard to figure it out, And but what I want to point out is that no one has to be an expert in journalism to figure stuff out. And that's the world we come from. That somehow you have to have a lot of letters behind your name to understand common sense and what you see. We have this foolish belief system that we should question all our understanding and belief. Some of us don't have to do that, but we do have a lot of people that put a question behind where there should be a period. And a lot of those people want us to doubt our own thinking and beliefs. And I really hope that people could just do a random search and seek it out for yourselves, because you don't have to be an expert to figure it out. But look up the explosions in Texas, and I would dig a little further and I'd write missiles, drones, anything around this explosion that happened in Texas, and you make your own assessment. I think that's fair to say that everybody can judge for themselves what they see and what they ingest in the media. And I want to just elaborate a little bit more here about some of that, and then what happened in Boston. I just find it odd and uncomfortable to describe the strangeness that happens. It seems like even in that 72 hours, as odd as it is, it's a very uncomfortable place for all of us to want to pinpoint anything in the first 72 hours. But as we've seen, a lot of strange things came out of these stories, and they just don't see. Oh, it's unraveling even today. My final point is that you're going to have to judge for yourself. And the people that need to see what they need to see, as I said before, will see what they need to see. It's just that plain simple. I don't want to influence people's opinions. I just want them to judge for themselves. I think that all of us have digested enough news to know what we need to know. And that's why I leave it at that. But as far as this whole investigative process or the news and how people have expert panels and etc., you don't have to have an expert panel to figure it out, okay? And I used to believe, I came from that understanding and belief that somehow you need expert panels and people could dissect this stuff themselves, but I found most of us have the tools out there. We can make our own general opinions and be satisfied with that at some point or another, and accept what we need to accept about what we see. I can't say I find this all acceptable. I don't like what I see on the news media, okay? Very, very uncomfortable with just accepting things as just, blanket statements. It's not a blanket solution. None of these do have a blanket solution. Every incident has a specific, almost like what a DNA structure is. Everything has a different identification, things that identify itself from one from another. They may be the same in a general sense, but they're very, very different as far as what comes out and what your own final assessment is on some of this, and if there is a final assessment. And I think it's still going to continue to evolve as more news comes out. So I would like to leave everybody with that open-ended opinion that you can change your mind and you can change your opinions on any of these topics. But one thing you cannot change is to decipher what real news is and what spin is. And I think we're all want to get past the spin and find out and come to some conclusions. But like I said, leave it open at the same time. I want to end on some things, and I thought it was relevant and very good. We digest so much social news media, and I think most of us need to kind of downplay some of it. And I'm taking it upon myself to take a little bit of a break, because I think, all circuits need to sometimes be recharged. And I heard a good, I guess I could say, I heard some really good stuff on having a social media fast, even for a couple hours a day, shutting things off because of what we consume in the news and overall information. But a lot of us are on overload at this point, and I think that break is necessary, and some of us need to really recover. Like I said, some of us have ingested so much information and so much we don't want to hear. And I found it very, very interesting. And it was coming from somebody who I really, really, really appreciate where they were coming from on social media. But because of all the information and news out there, it's okay to take a time out. And we're going to do more of those timeouts, because I don't want to aggravate an already uncomfortable situation. And I think a lot of people, the reason they're so uncomfortable is because the news is always evolving. So you might as well just hang back, give yourself the weekend to kind of recharge your battery, so to speak. No pun intended, but I think it would be fair to say that as far as all the other news that's covered, like I said, this is why sometimes if you are into the updates, you need to know general news. General news is general news. All the other stuff is just kind of filling in the holes over the course of the days into after initial news reports. So like I said, you can afford to take that time out for your family and get the weekend to recharge your battery. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And I think we're going to take our own advice and follow up with more news another time. But like I said, it's hard to really pinpoint it. Sometimes I find these news reports and I'm stumbling upon more information, and it's like digging yourself a hole in itself. So we're going to stick with the general information that we do understand, and we'll evaluate it over time. We're not going to make a concrete opinion, but I have to tell you, it's hard to trust all the information what you're getting. There's an old saying, trust half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to recharge our battery and start out fresh over the next course of the week. So we're going to have a timeout, and that's good. And we want to thank you for listening. Have a good weekend. We'll follow up with this video YouTube. We'll do other random stuff throughout the weekend if we decide to, and if not, we'll follow up sometime next week with more. As of course, I'm going to take a time out, and thanks again for listening here at the Field Report.